pretty much every Sunday, unless I was sick, I have been able to assemble with the church freely without fear of reprisal and without fear of being arrested or accosted or anything like that, at least from the government. Um, Freedom of speech, free enterprise. A wonderful place to live is America, and I'm grateful for how God has prospered this nation and how God has blessed it. And I'm grateful for the sacrifice of so many brave men and women throughout the decades and centuries who have fought so that we might be free. I'm grateful for the patriots. I'm grateful for early Christians who were here in America, who, when things started to go a little bit wonky early on, men like Roger Williams, who defended freedom of religion and rather than legislating a state religion, saying that men ought to be free to decide. God created men that way. He gave us a free will. God did not legislate into our existence faith in him. God actually made man with a free will, a conscience, and an ability to choose. And we believe that to be true. So if God didn't legislate that into my being, I ought not to encourage it to be legislated into my government, nor has it been traditionally in America, though there were times where, the analogy in my head is of a boat or a ship, and it starts to maybe lean a little bit. It's not sinking yet, but definitely some things need to happen if it's going to survive. And men and women early on in America's history were willing to do some astounding things to preserve that freedom. So I'm grateful for the wars that have been fought, the people who fought in those wars, I ought to say, to preserve our freedom, all of our freedoms. I'm grateful for the wars that were fought on our own soil, whether they were held in a courtroom or if they were held by taking stands like the early Christians in America, who many of them were beaten or martyred for believing that men ought to be free to choose how to pursue God in their own conscience and based in their belief. And so anyways, I'm grateful for all of that. My mind is just kind of going to all of those things. And I think probably today, I don't know, there's a new angle on my celebration of independence, of freedom, that was won so long ago for America, because I'm careful not to say that we're losing those freedoms. The coronavirus of 2020 has brought in some unprecedented things, and you guys know that, obviously. And I'm thinking of my friends in California, family, friends, pastors in California having to make some interesting decisions this week, tomorrow. They have been told by their government, the local government of the state of California, that they are not allowed to sing. So they can assemble, but there will be no singing in the church, is what the state has told them. No singing in the church. The state has not stopped protests. The state has not monitored. The state has not said, okay, protests are okay, but within those protests, there will not be any fill in the blank. Most churches have complied with the state's desires, yet they are telling the church, you cannot sing. And for many, that is definitely crossing a line, in my opinion, my belief that is crossing a line. And so as I celebrate America's independence, I'm not too quick to say that we are losing those things, but this would be a taste of what it might feel like. And it makes me more grateful. It makes me want to fight for those freedoms. within the proper channels. We studied Romans 13 together for several weeks, and understanding proper submission to authority, and the purpose of authority, the source of authority. All authority is God's authority, and he delegates his authority to human agents to fulfill his will in society. That is a principle found in the Bible, a principle and a pillar of my moral framework, because we build our lives on the Bible. Our name is Bible Baptist Church, right? Bible. And the Bible says that God has established authority, so I submit to that. But when one established authority of God crosses another established authority of God, then we have a confusing situation, right? And this happens all the time. This is no new thing. This happens all the time when the authority of the government crosses the authority of the church or crosses the authority of the family. That's when we can biblically rise up and say, no. And this isn't rebellion against God's authority. This is rebellion against a rebellion of God's authority. Okay, so God's authority ambassadors aren't always responsible with their authority. And so if they over-exercise their authority, that's on them. That's not on God. And so, for instance, if a father abuses his authority as the head of the house by asking his children to do sinful acts or demanding his wife to do something that's unbiblical or illegal, basically, let's just say illegal. He pulls up to a gas station and says, "We don't have any money, honey. I want you to go inside and steal a pack of cigarettes." Okay. She should say, no. Period. No. But the husband's the head of the house. She ought to submit to her husband, right, within the bounds of her husband's authority and the proper structure of a family. But she has no obligation to obey him when his instruction to her is obviously a disobedient instruction to God. So she would be able to properly say, no, I ought to obey God rather than you, husband, or children, however you want to spin this. So when the state tells the church or the Christian something that's anti-biblical, against the Bible, that's immoral, that crosses the authority structures, that's when we can respectfully, with dignity, with love and humility, but with passion and zeal and strength, say, no, we will obey God rather than men. That's when rebellion is proper. That's when it's good. That's when it's righteous. That's also when persecution begins. So today we celebrate our nation's independence, and I'm grateful for the freedom that I've enjoyed, and I pray that we will continue enjoying it for years to come. The events that have happened so far in 2020 at least make me start thinking about the possibilities of a different future for the next 28 years than the realities of my previous 28 years. And either way, we can rejoice in the Lord always. As Paul said, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. And this was a man who lived under a much worse government than we do, and who lived in much stranger times than we do, and with much more persecution for sure, as he writes those words in a prison cell because he preached about Jesus. Nobody's ever thrown me in jail because I preach Jesus. And he's able to say, look, I understand it can be scary, but he said in Philippians 1, nothing terrified of your adversaries, which is an evident token of tradition to them. Don't fear what they can do to you, for to you to live is Christ and to die is gain. Okay, so we're being honest about what is possible, thankful for what is past, and we can rejoice. We can look, if we're walking in the Spirit and we understand a biblical worldview, we can learn how to abound, or we can learn how to suffer, And in both, we can learn to be content. In whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. So I don't fear the future. I can be honest about what I see and honest about what I'd like to see. And also with my God-given authority as a citizen of the United States of America, I do have a level of authority, okay? It's not just like the Roman government in which Jesus lived, where, hey, you had no authority, you had no stance. God has blessed us with a democracy in which, yes, President Trump is my authority, and yes, Governor Baker is my authority, and yes, the police officers driving down the street are my authority, but I also possess a certain level of authority. I can vote, I can protest, I can make my voice known. That's not rebellion. Be careful not to label exercise of biblically given authority as rebellion against authority. All right? So, hey, we're preaching a little bit. Sorry. I'm just excited for my independence, excited for the celebration that we all engage in today. I hope we engage in this today. America is a wonderful nation. I know that it's got its issues, and they've been even more of them brought to light throughout this year. We should be grateful and thankful for what God has blessed us with. We ought to pray for revival. We ought to pray for security of our nation. And then we ought to rejoice in the Lord, whatever may come. So let's get into our Bible reading today. I wanted to say those few thoughts about the 4th of July. And we are reading today in Proverbs 5 through 9. And let's read them. We've got some warnings today. My son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop as in honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Just a reminder, there's several hypothetical people or illustrative, personifications throughout the book of Proverbs. We were introduced to her, I think, was she in chapter 1, I think? No, chapter 2, we've got the strange woman, starting chapter 2, verse 16. And so we're kind of revisiting this woman, and the scene is set in chapter 1 of a public place. I imagine like a busy market with vendors and artists and entertainers and all kinds of things going on. There's just it's a busy hustle and bustle sort of moment, and there's the little group, the little gang, of sinners that are enticing the son of the king, the prince, and there's also this beautiful mother-like figure who stands in the middle of the street and cries out, and her name is Wisdom, who is if there's a central character of the book, she is it, okay? Miss Wisdom is so important, Lady Wisdom, and the son is being instructed by the father to embrace her, not to listen to the gang of sinners who are enticing him. And then we were introduced to another person, the evil man, which would be like a father-like figure that this son of the king, the prince, would possibly be attracted to as a father figure. Instead of going to Wisdom, and instead of listening to his biological father who is wise, going to another father-like figure for advice and for a model to follow. And then we got this strange woman who is a seductress, and she is trying to woo the prince into her embrace in an affair or in fornication. In this case, I don't believe the prince is married yet. She is not well-intentioned. This is not love. This is a seduction of gain for her own personal reasons, which, nothing new there. He's a prince. He's rich. He's important. He's powerful. And she wants to get her hands all over him. And so the king is wise in saying, look, son, you're handsome, you're important, you're popular. There's a lot of reasons why a girl would want you. And you've got to watch out for this strange woman. So that's what we're reading about today, which don't relegate this just to a young man and seductive young women. This would be all temptation, regardless of your age or gender. These parallels exist for every single one of us. And God made us sexual creatures. I'm not embarrassed to say that or to talk about it. Of course, we need to be careful with our language here. But I want us not to relegate this only to a young man. That's the audience. That's who this is being written to. But the Proverbs are wise for every single one of us. And so, kind of wear your own shoes here and kind of put yourself into the story and understand this in relation to your personal situation. There are strange people, and I don't mean weirdos. I mean people who would be foreign, people who do not belong to you, who would want you to act as though they belong to you. Pornography, fake brides, all sorts of deviations, affairs, emotional or physical affairs, all sorts of things that this could apply to. So think about that as we're reading the following verses, because Satan walks about as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And one of his most effective ways to devour us is not in ways that appear painful, but at first appear very pleasurable. And so for all of us, let's read this, understanding that this is for us, for our understanding, for our wisdom, not just for little Rehoboam, not just for the prince, but also for the old woman and the middle-aged man and the young man and the little girl. This is important for all of us to understand, okay? So let's read this with that understanding. All right, we'll start again in verse 3. For the lips of a strange woman drop as in honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. Sounds pretty good. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. Wow. It is so hard to convince us, ourselves even, when we're being seduced by whatever the temptation is, to understand this is going to destroy you. It's going to shatter your life, your family. How many families have been destroyed by unfaithful spouses who probably didn't want their family to be broken up? I mean, some people do. They hate their marriage. They don't want the kids, fill in the blank with all kinds of different issues. But a lot of people love their family. They love their husband or they love their wife. They want to be a good parent to their children. They want to grow old and this family be their family until death do them part. But they just get attracted to that person who they work with or that individual who they used to be who they used to date, and they found them on Facebook and just realized that they're only a few blocks away, and one thing led to another, and they just didn't consider the end of it. And that's what Solomon is exhorting his son to. Be wise, little prince. Understand that, yes, it looks delicious and fun and wonderful and exciting, but it's not too hard to imagine the heartache that can come afterwards. So think about that. Consider the end. Verse 6, lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel. Lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. And thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. And say, how have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear to them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation and assembly. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well. Verse 15 is important. He's instructing his son, look, you can be satisfied in this area. Pleasure is not anti-God. The Bible tells us for his pleasure, they are and were created, in reference to all created things. In other words, I've heard the question asked, why did God create stuff? And the bad answer is, well, God got lonely up in heaven and needed something to do, so he created us. Okay? No, we're not God's toys to entertain him and occupy his eternal mind that got bored. No, that's ridiculous, and it's never written in the Bible in any way, shape, or form to tell us that. Two things the Bible tells us that God created, two reasons why God created, period, like all stuff. Why did God create? For his glory. He wanted some things to manifest his glory to, which is pretty cool. He wanted to bless something with his presence. We happen to be those things. What an amazing truth that is. So we benefit from creation because we get to understand who he is. For his glory, they are and were created, and also for his pleasure. So to us, his glory, and to him, his pleasure. God created us for his pleasure. God created things, and the Bible says he has given us all things richly to enjoy. I'm telling you what the Bible says about pleasure. Pleasure is God-given. It is a grace. It is a gift from God. Pleasure is. You can't tell me that the God who made the peach didn't want me to enjoy eating. Okay? The God who made bacon and flowers and kittens and puppies and all of the... Look, God made things to be pleasurable, and it's not wrong to enjoy those pleasures. What's wrong is to enjoy them outside of the boundaries in which he placed them. All right? So the father, Solomon, tells Prince Rehoboam, look, buddy, drink waters out of thine own cistern and running waters out of thine own well. He's trying to be discreet. Dad giving advice, the birds and the bees. And he says, son, look, it's like I'm trying to be the awkward dad. My day is coming, okay? I'm trying to be the awkward dad. Son, look, it's like a water fountain in which it's like a water bottle. Don't drink out of somebody else's water bottle. That's not good, okay? But look, here's a water bottle for you. In other words, God has provided a way in which you can enjoy the pleasures that your heart desires. He put that desire there. He created your body. He made no mistake when he made 16-year-old boys to like girls, okay? He made that's not a problem. This is not something we should fight against. We shouldn't make people feel bad because they have sexual desires, because look, hey, we're all people and God made us that way. But we ought to drink waters out of our own cistern and running waters out of our own well. Thank you, Solomon, for being discreet, for illustrating to us that God wants us to, like the title of the book, which is good for married couples to read, but not unmarried couples, intended for pleasure, okay? God didn't make reproduction just to reproduce. God gave us all things richly to enjoy. I think we've made our point, okay? Verse 16, let thy fountains be dispersed abroad and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own and not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind and pleasant roe. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. And why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. Well, we're reminded in chapter 5 that the author of this proverb is also the author of Song of Solomon, which will be a fun one for us to read together on our daily walk. But all right, well, let's move on. I think we made our point. Great instruction. I think it's an uncomfortable subject. It ought to be a relatively normal subject. I do mean that. Of course, we need to be discreet. And this subject is kind of like dynamite. It can be used well, but it also can explode and be very dangerous. And that's why we're careful with it. But we ought not to be silent about it. I think many Christians have just kept this truth, even though it's pretty astounding how often sex is brought up in the Bible. Really, it honestly is. It's talked about a lot, both in positive and negative light. And many Christian circles are just like very hush-hush about it, which is a shame and has resulted in some really negative outcomes. Mostly, we're not instructing young people, and we're giving off the wrong vibe. They don't know how to possess their vessel, to use biblical language. They get the impression that it's just altogether bad, that sexual desire is a bug. You know, like to use computer language, you've got a bug. It's something that you are annoyed with, something you try to stamp out, something that you try to suppress. I believe that sexual desires are not a bug, but they are a feature, something built into us that has a wonderful purpose. It is a gift of God, and we need to not be silent as Christians in regards to this. We need to give biblical, beautiful truth regarding it. All right, moving forward. Chapter 6. My son, another truth here. If thou be surety for thy friend, if thou hast stricken thy hand with a stranger, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth. Thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. He is talking about the relationships in your life. Basically, he's saying, if you have relationships and friendships that encourage you to keep silent about sin, that's not a good friendship. And it's going to come back and hurt you later on. Verse 3, do this now, my son, and deliver thyself. When thou art come into the hand of thy friend, go, humble thyself, and make sure thy friend. Give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber to thine eyelids. Deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. We're introduced to a new character here. So far we've got the gang of the enticing sinners. We've got the evil man. We've got Lady Wisdom. And we've got the strange woman. And the fifth crew here would be this character known as the sluggard. And it means what you think it means. It's basically an animal. Sloth and sluggard are both based on the sloth, like the monkey-like guy that's just super slow and just does nothing, is just lazy. I believe God made the sloth to teach us about laziness. I don't know. And then the slug. If you've ever watched a slug, you've been bored, okay? They don't move very fast. Or maybe think of a snail, okay? So, go to the ant, slug. Slug, watch the ant. Here we are just zooming into the bug world here. And the slug has a lot to learn from the ant. And when we ought to act more like ants and less like slugs. All right, verse 9. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. Oh, wow. The Bible is not against sleep, but it is against laziness. And there's a fine line, okay? Get what you need medically. There's been an overemphasis in some places of, just praising people who don't sleep. Workaholism is one of the most encouraged sins in the Christian circles. We applaud it. We congratulate it. Oh, what a hard worker. Do you ever get any rest? Oh, you never take a day off. What a godly man. No, that's not godly. That's not righteous. It's not commendable. It's not praiseworthy. One of the first things we learn about God's nature in Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3 is that on the seventh day, God, we all said, rested. And then, as he establishes formal corporate worship for the nation of Israel, and he writes down, he says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Of the 10 commandments, 1/10 of them, one of them, is a command to Sabbath, to rest, to stop, to cease your labor. 6 days shall you labor, the seventh is the Lord's. And so anyway, I'm talkative today. I've been up for several hours studying, and so I've just got a lot of thoughts on my mind and 2 cups of coffee. So sorry, I'm a little chatty today. But the point of that was the Bible is not against rest. Oh my goodness. You do a study on the word rest through the Bible, and you're going to be encouraged. Hebrews talks about it so much. It's just all through the Bible. God blesses us. Rest, like sex, is a gift. But the father, Solomon here, is warning his son against using the beautiful, pleasurable gifts of God in ways that aren't beautiful, that aren't right. Okay? So drink water out of your own water fountain, son. And when it comes to rest, take it. Enjoy it. God has given it to you. I believe it's just as godly to observe a Sabbath on a weekly basis and a longer Sabbath on a more extended but regular basis, maybe a yearly vacation, is just as godly, righteous, and obedient to the instruction of the Bible as church attendance or as tithing. It's important to take rest, but it's also important not to abuse the gift of God. And that's what we're being instructed here when it comes to the sluggard. Verse 12, a naughty person, a wicked man, walketh with a froward mouth. He winketh with his eyes. He speaketh with his feet. He teacheth with his fingers. Frowardness is in his heart. He deviseth mischief continually. He soweth discord. Oh goodness, I'm sorry. There's just so much to learn and so much help in these verses. So wise Solomon, the depth of this wisdom, this is deep right here. What he just told his son, he's talking about a wicked man. It says he walketh with a froward mouth. Froward means crooked. Crookedness, it's kind of hard to identify the direction here. And so he's saying, the way you identify a wicked person or a naughty person, to use his word here, is not always by their language, because language is so easy to twist and deceive with. Know them by their fruits is what we're told in the New Testament. Basically, he said, you can't really go off of what he says. He might say, Mr. Hitler might say, I'm concerned about national security, or I'm here to defend the peace of our nation. Well, doesn't that sound great? Man, I can support that. Well, yeah, but he winketh with his eyes. He speaks with his feet. He teacheth with his fingers, okay? Watch the actions of a person, and you'll be able to tell the direction of their path. Don't listen to their words so much as you watch. The proof is in the pudding, right? You're playing defense in basketball, at least. I'm sure it applies to other sports. In basketball, especially if you've got a real shifty, graceful, and good offensive player, a point guard who's really good, Never watch their eyes. They will get you. Okay? Don't even watch their head. The higher up in elevation the body part, the less you can trust it when it comes to defense in basketball. Head fakes, body, even twisting the body, even ball handling. So much of the upper body can be deceitful and deceptive. And if you're watching their eyes, you're watching their mouth, their body language up top, they are going to trick you and you're going to fall for their tricks. What you ought to do in defense in basketball is to watch their feet. Because look, you can trick somebody about where you're going. You can look right and walk left. You can look up but not jump. You can look down and then jump. That you can trick with up here. But you really can't turn your feet left and walk right. And that's kind of what he's telling his son. Here's some wise instruction, Prince Rehoboam, because you're going to have a lot of people coming to you with all kinds of different initiatives and philosophies and directions they want you to go. Watch their fingers and their feet. Listen to their words, but watch their fingers and their feet. That's great advice from a father right there. Okay, verse 15. Therefore shall his calamity come suddenly. Suddenly shall he be broken without remedy. These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among the brethren. My son, keep thy father's commandment, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually upon thine heart, and tie them about thy neck. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life, to keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Can a man take fire in his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals, and his feet not be burned? So he that goeth in to his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her shall not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief, if he steal to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore 7-fold. He shall give all the substance of his house. Oh my goodness, I wonder, wasn't it 7-fold the amount that Zacchaeus promised Jesus he would repay everybody that he stole from? And I wonder if that decision was informed from the book of Proverbs, because obviously Zacchaeus, even though he was not a man of faith prior to meeting Jesus, he would have heard the Proverbs before. I always thought that he just kind of chose 7. I wonder if his decision here regarding thievery, because he had been stealing from people, he was a tax collector, was at least informed by the thief will repay 7-fold. And Zacchaeus repents truly of his sin. And so to fix the problem, he doesn't just repay what he took. He decided to pay, I can't remember if it's 7-fold, but that seems right. It's just an interesting thought. Verse 32. But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom, neither will he rest content, though thou givest many gifts. Chapter 7. My son, keep my words, and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers. Write them upon the table of thine heart. Say unto wisdom, Thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. For at the window of my house I look through my casement. All right, so I like this parable. This is the 3rd time in 3 chapters that Solomon has brought up this strange woman, and also has posed wisdom as the woman that he ought to embrace. In fact, he actually calls her not like a mother figure. In this case, he treats Lady Wisdom as a sister. And so this sister, I've never had a sister truly, but I imagine a good sister watching out for her brother is going to have those female instincts about this girl who's seducing her brother, and she's going to help him. So Solomon is kind of painting a new picture for Prince Rehoboam, and is saying, look, treat Wisdom like your sister. Wisdom is going to help you understand the nature of this woman. This woman doesn't want to help you. This woman doesn't love you. This woman wants to hurt you through her seduction. And so you've got this concept of the sisterly nature of Wisdom that is going to, in love and sincerity, with nothing really to gain, just wants to take care of her brother, wants to help him. And then Solomon now says, now, son, I want to tell you about something I saw. I was standing in the palace, and I looked out of the window, and I just watched this whole thing take place. I watched something happen. Let me tell you this account. Let me tell you what I saw, son. Okay? For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and beheld among the simple ones, I discerned among the youths, a young man void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner, and he went the way to her house. Oh, just a simple young man. He hasn't decided really one way or another whether he's going to pursue righteousness, pursue wisdom, or somebody else, or anything else. And he's just kind of dumbly walking through the streets, whistling a happy tune. And it's like, oh, I remember that house of that strange woman. And he's like, I'll just walk by, see what's going on. I'll say hi. No harm in saying hi. Okay, well, here's what happens. As he, void of understanding, passes right by her house, he walks by the way of her house. Verse 9, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. Bad timing, Mr. Simple. Maybe you're not so simple. Maybe you actually had some intention there. And behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot. So he's going to start describing the way these evil, seductive people present themselves. Firstly, often you can tell by the way they're dressed, okay? This is a stereotype. Solomon's just saying what he saw. Not everybody who dresses differently than you is going to... You don't just go labeling people as, I'm trying to be careful with my words. These are hard words, as seductors or seductresses. Those are the words I'm choosing to use. There's other words that people use, even biblical words. I'm just going to be careful with them. I'm just going to say those words for now. For instance, I remember in Bible college, some of the girls were brought in and really rebuked hard. I think by a well-meaning but a misled or just not a wise person who was on staff. And, I can say that now in hindsight, looking back at it. And these girls were wearing heels. And in this older woman's perspective, those heels were the attire of an harlot. And so she accused these are girls at Bible college who married young men who loved God, who read their Bibles, who prayed, who pursued the Lord, and even now are in ministry. Okay, they're not who Solomon is describing. And, anyways, be careful with that. But generally speaking, these are Proverbs. Generally speaking, you can tell by the way they present themselves in their dress. And subtle of heart, she is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Wow. Hey, I'm all paid up with God. I've given my offerings. Like, hey, everything's cool. I've got a clean slate as it is now, so I can afford a little sin tonight. That's a weird way of treating it. That's a Catholic way of treating it. If you're earning your salvation, then if you think you're pretty righteous, then you can afford a certain amount of sin. you'll just pay for it later. Hey, yeah, I've paid all my vows. I'm good to go, man. Let's do it. That's what she says. So she's justifying, even in spiritual language, her sin. Isn't that the way sin works? Anyway, I'm looking at my time, and I've got 15 minutes before this thing shuts off, whether I like it or not, so I better keep reading. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the goodman is not at home. He is gone a long journey. My husband will never find out. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed. With her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend to the words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline to her ways, go not astray in her paths. For she hath cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of the high places, by the way in the places of the paths. She crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. From my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. Receive my instruction and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree, that the waters should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was by him, as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Wow. Lady Wisdom proves to us in chapter 8, it doesn't just tell us that she's more valuable than rubies and gold. She proves to us why. Because rubies and gold are created substances. they are earthly. Wisdom is godly. Wisdom is from God. You could say that wisdom is a part of God. It is who he is. Wisdom. So wisdom personified as this lady says, rubies and gold and all the stuff of earth has been created. It has a beginning point and it's got a little expiration date on it. I don't know what that date is, but it's all going to melt with fervent heat. Hey, gold and rubies aren't going to last forever. Riches take their wings and they fly away. They tend to do that, right? Oh, wow, look, our bank account looks great. Oh, blew a head gasket in the car. See you later, nice bank account. And wisdom says, hey, no, I'm eternal. I was there when God made everything. I was there before God made everything. And I'll be there after everything is gone. So why don't you buy into something eternal? Buy into wisdom. Sell it not. Get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. What a rich blessing wisdom is. Chapter 9, wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. She hath killed her beasts. She hath mingled her wine. She hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens. She crieth upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple, and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house, on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. Some great reading today, so much wisdom. We could not mind the depth of all of that. But I hope that it's been a blessing to you today. And I forgot to tell you, I don't have my computer with me. I came in early and been studying and left the computer at home, just forgot to go grab it. So I haven't been able to see your comments or anything like that. I'm sure they've been wonderful. I'm glad you have attended today. And I hope you have a wonderful Independence Day, 4th of July. And hope you are refreshed and ready to worship the Lord with gladness and to come before his presence with singing. God commanded. And so we will come tomorrow. We have a service at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. You can choose which one to come to. And I hope that we'll see many people come. And just looking forward to preaching the Word of God, talking about the war for freedom in our own soul. And there is a battle every single day as we consider the battles that were fought for our independence as a nation, and the battle that is always raging inside of our heart for freedom, for peace, the spirit warreth against the flesh, and the statement, freedom is not free. It comes at a cost. It comes at a daily fight for us. To be free from sin and death is a fight, and so it's worth it. So be a patriot. Be a patriot who fights against sin in his own heart, and for the defense of the gospel walks in the Spirit. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you for the wisdom that we read today, and I pray that we would take it to heart. Help us, Lord, not to be like Rehoboam, the recipient or one of the recipients of the Proverbs of Solomon, directly written to his son, who did not heed the instruction of his father, and he forsook the instruction of his mother, Lord, and he went the way of a foolish man. Lord, I pray that you'd help us not to be like that, but that we would heed your instruction in your word. Lord, that we would all be careful, regardless of our age, gender, marital status. We'd all be careful of sexual temptations, that we would consider the end of all of those temptations. Lord, it's a problem in all of society. It's a problem in our churches. And Lord, Christians struggle with lust because we're human. And when we walk in the flesh, we are tempted. We're drawn away. We're enticed. And when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So, Lord, I pray that you would help us to fight a good fight for the freedom of our souls. Lord, empower us through your Spirit to fight that fight, to mortify our flesh and to walk in the Spirit so we will not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Happy 4th of July.